My involvement with the Skinwalker Ranch incident began in late 2008, while I was working as a senior research analyst for the National Institute for Discovery Science, NIDS. The initial report seemed routine. Another case of missing time and unexplained phenomena at a location already famous for paranormal activity. 3 ranch hands had disappeared during a routine fence check, only to reappear 48 hours later with no memory of where they'd been. What made this case different was the physical evidence. Their cellular structure showed signs of exposure to unidentified radiation types, and their blood work revealed molecular changes that our best scientists couldn't explain. The ranch's advanced security system had captured the moment of disappearance in high definition from multiple angles. The footage showed something unprecedented. The men didn't simply vanish, but rather seemed to fold out of reality, their forms distorting in ways that violated our understanding of physics. The air around them crystallized into geometric patterns that our experts claimed shouldn't be possible, creating structures that appeared to exist in more dimensions than we could perceive. The ranch owner provided us with years of accumulated data that painted a disturbing picture. Equipment malfunctions followed mathematical patterns too precise to be random, forming sequences that our cryptography team identified as potential communication attempts. GPS systems would show impossible coordinates, placing the same location at multiple points simultaneously. Radiation detectors registered energy signatures that shouldn't exist according to current physics, but these readings followed progressions that suggested intelligence rather than natural phenomena. Most telling were the patterns in the timing of these events. They corresponded to specific astronomical alignments that matched ancient Ute ceremonial calendars. The tribe had warned early settlers about this land, describing it as a place where the barriers between worlds grew thin during certain celestial configurations. These warnings had been dismissed as superstition until we overlaid the tribal star charts with our incident timeline and found perfect correlations. The soil analysis from the disappearance site revealed changes at the molecular level that defied explanation. The atomic structure had been altered in ways that should have required conditions only found in specialized particle accelerators, yet these changes had occurred in open air at normal temperature and pressure. More disturbing were the organic compounds we discovered mixed with the soil, complex molecular structures that appeared to be actively evolving under our microscopes. We had to store the samples in magnetically shielded containers after discovering they were emitting signals that interfered with electronic equipment. Several of our most sophisticated analysis devices malfunctioned after exposure to these samples, but not before recording data that suggested the material was attempting to reorganize itself into more complex structures. The implications were staggering. We were dealing with something that could manipulate matter at the atomic level, and appeared to be using this ability to create some form of communication system through molecular manipulation. Dave Miller, the head ranch hand, had maintained detailed logs of animal behavior that revealed patterns previously overlooked. The cattle would arrange themselves in geometric formations 72 hours before each incident, creating shapes that were only visible from above and matched ancient petroglyphs found in nearby caves. The ranch's veterinarian documented unprecedented physiological changes in these animals, cellular mutations that appeared to be intelligently directed rather than random, creating new neural pathways that resembled biological transmission systems. The tissue samples showed signs of precise surgical alterations performed with technology beyond current medical capabilities. The cuts were made at the molecular level, separating tissues by disrupting atomic bonds rather than cutting through them. Each mutilation site also showed traces of radiation that matched the signatures detected during the human disappearance incidents, suggesting these events were different aspects of the same phenomenon. Sarah Blackfoot, a Ute tribal elder who had been monitoring the ranch for decades, provided historical context that transformed our understanding of the phenomena. The tribe had maintained detailed records disguised as traditional stories, describing entities they called the measurers, beings that existed between physical states and conducted systematic studies of living creatures. These entities weren't considered supernatural, but rather highly advanced beings that used technology incomprehensible to human understanding. Their appearances followed specific astronomical cycles and had been documented by the tribe for centuries. Most significant was the tribe's description of these beings' purpose. They weren't simply observing or hunting, but rather conducting long-term experiments in biological engineering. The recent increase in activity coincided with changes in the Earth's magnetic field, suggesting these entities were responding to environmental factors that modern science was only beginning to detect. Electronic equipment didn't simply fail at the ranch. It exhibited signs of active manipulation that suggested something was studying our technology, learning how it worked, and developing increasingly sophisticated methods of interaction. Security cameras would capture impossible images before failing, objects moving backwards through time, creatures that changed shape when viewed from different angles, and most disturbingly, human figures that appeared to be assembled from patterns of light rather than solid matter. The ranch's advanced security system, which included quantum encryption and artificial intelligence analysis, began detecting patterns in these anomalies that suggested a form of non-human intelligence, was actively probing our technological capabilities. The AI's analysis indicated that each equipment failure was actually a successful test of a different method of technological manipulation, demonstrating a systematic learning process that became more sophisticated with each interaction. Laboratory analysis of physical evidence revealed a level of technological sophistication that exceeded human capabilities. Core samples from beneath the ranch contained isotopes that shouldn't exist in nature, with atomic structures that appeared to be artificially engineered for specific purposes. Metal objects found near anomaly zones exhibited molecular changes that enhanced their conductivity far beyond known physical limits. Most significant were the biological samples. Plants and animals from the area showed signs of accelerated evolution, developing characteristics that appeared designed to interact with the phenomena we were studying. These mutations followed patterns suggesting intelligent direction rather than random genetic drift, creating living sensors capable of detecting and responding to specific frequencies of energy that our equipment couldn't measure. When we compared these findings with classified data from previous government investigations, we found evidence that similar mutations had been occurring at other sites around the world, always in locations with specific geological and electromagnetic properties. The radiation signatures emanating from the ranch matched patterns described in ancient Sumerian texts, which detailed encounters with beings that existed in a state between matter and energy. These descriptions, previously dismissed as mythology, contained mathematical formulas disguised as religious ceremonies. Formulas that perfectly described the quantum state changes we were observing. Our cryptographic analysis revealed that the equipment interference patterns contained encoded information that followed mathematical principles only recently discovered by quantum computing researchers. The entities weren't just shutting down our equipment, they were attempting to establish communication through direct manipulation of electronic systems, using methods that demonstrated an understanding of physics far beyond current human knowledge. Archaeological evidence added the final piece to the puzzle. Ground-penetrating radar revealed structures deep beneath the ranch that appeared to predate known human civilization. These formations, too precise to be natural, formed geometric patterns that matched both the cattle formations we'd observed and the ancient petroglyphs in the surrounding areas. Core samples from these structures contained alloys that shouldn't exist in nature, with isotopic signatures suggesting they had been artificially created using technology that exceeded current human capabilities. Carbon dating of organic materials found near these structures produced impossible results, dates that oscillated between different time periods, as if the samples existed in multiple temporal states simultaneously. The Ute tribal records spoke of these underground structures as doorways or interfaces, used by the entities to move between different states of reality. The true purpose of the ranch phenomena became clear when Dr. Chen discovered a pattern in the DNA mutations. The changes weren't random, but followed a precise sequence that appeared to be creating new neural structures in affected organisms. These modifications showed signs of accelerating, spreading through the local ecosystem like a carefully engineered virus. The cattle mutations, equipment failures, and human disappearances weren't separate phenomena. They were stages in a systematic process of environmental modification. The entities weren't just studying us. They were gradually transforming the ranch into what Dr. Chen called a biological interface zone. The underground structures we'd discovered weren't just doorways. They were components of a vast machine designed to facilitate this transformation, using the unique geological properties of the area to amplify their effects. Most disturbing was the realization that this process had progressed much further than we initially believed. The government's involvement took on new significance when Mr. Black returned unexpectedly with a team of specialists. They brought equipment we'd never seen before, devices that could detect what they called consciousness wavelengths. Their data revealed that the ranch existed in multiple states simultaneously, overlapping with other realities in ways that our brains typically filtered out. The missing time incidents weren't cases of unconsciousness or memory loss. The victims had been experiencing other versions of reality, their consciousness temporarily shifting between different quantum states. The entities weren't just visiting our reality, they were creating zones where multiple realities could coexist, using living organisms as conduits between these different states. The modifications we'd observed in local wildlife weren't random mutations, but calculated adjustments, creating creatures that could exist simultaneously in multiple realities. Sarah Blackfoot's final revelation shifted our understanding dramatically. The tribe's oldest stories spoke of a time when humans could move freely between different states of reality, their consciousness not limited to a single version of existence. The entities weren't invaders or observers, but rather something far more profound. They were trying to restore human consciousness to its original state. The ranch was one of several sites worldwide where these beings were working to reactivate dormant human capabilities, using precisely engineered biological and technological modifications to awaken abilities that modern humans had lost or forgotten. The recent increase in activity wasn't an invasion or experiment. It was the final stage of a process that had been running for thousands of years. The disappearances, mutations, and equipment failures were side effects of an attempt to expand human consciousness beyond its current limitations, preparing us for contact with a much larger reality. Our final discovery at the ranch came after months of analyzing Dr. Tanaka's quantum computing data. The patterns in the equipment malfunctions weren't just communication attempts. They were implementing changes in the quantum structure of reality itself, creating stable zones where consciousness could operate outside normal physical constraints. The entities had been gradually expanding these zones, using the modified wildlife as living anchors to maintain these altered states. The underground structures formed a network that amplified these effects, creating what Dr. Tanaka called consciousness amplification fields. These fields were growing stronger and more stable, suggesting that whatever process the entities had initiated was approaching a critical phase. Most significant was the effect these fields had on human consciousness. People exposed to them began experiencing reality in profoundly different ways, gaining awareness of multiple timelines and parallel states of existence. Everything we thought we understood about consciousness, reality, and human potential was shattered during the final phase of our investigation. The modified organisms weren't just adapting to survive in altered reality states. They were becoming interfaces between different layers of existence. The tribe's warnings about skinwalkers took on new meaning when we realized they weren't describing shapeshifters, but rather beings that could consciously move between different versions of reality. The recent disappearances weren't random. They were carefully selected individuals whose consciousness was being prepared for this transition. Mr. Black's team revealed that similar transformations were occurring at other sites around the world, all approaching synchronization. The pattern suggested a coordinated effort to create what they called consciousness bridges, points where human awareness could expand beyond its current limitations. The ranch suddenly went dark 2 weeks ago. All communication ceased, and satellite imagery shows distortions that make the entire area unreadable. Our last data transmission from Dr. Tanaka's equipment recorded consciousness wavelengths that exceeded anything we'd previously measured. The government has established a 50-mile exclusion zone around the property, but we're detecting the same quantum signatures at increasing distances from the ranch. The modified wildlife has begun appearing in populated areas, showing signs of further evolution. Most disturbing are the reports from local residents. They're experiencing identical dreams of geometric patterns and multiple realities, suggesting that whatever consciousness expansion process the entities initiated is spreading. I'm writing this account from a secure facility where I'm being monitored for signs of similar changes. Yesterday, during a routine brain scan, my neural patterns matched those we observed in the modified organisms at the ranch. This morning, I began seeing overlapping versions of reality, each one as real as the last. The entities weren't just studying us or trying to communicate. They were preparing humanity for the next phase of evolution. And now, as I watch the world around me split into multiple coexisting states, I realized that their preparation wasn't just successful, it was inevitable.